You know that totally universal, slightly jarring moment when you catch your own reflection.
Oh, yeah, like when you look in the rearview mirror of your car or
Right. Or your phone screen just goes dark for a second and you look at yourself and think, why do I look so angry?
yes, or just completely exhausted.
Exactly. Why do I look so completely exhausted? Meanwhile, internally, you are in perfectly good spirits. You had a great morning. You feel fine. But your face is broadcasting this completely different, much heavier message to the world.
It's a profoundly common experience, honestly. Clinical experts actually call it the communication gap.
The communication gap. I like that term.
Yeah, it's caused by what we call dynamic wrinkles. Your internal vitality it stops matching your outward physical expression. It creates this huge disconnect between how you feel and how the world actually perceives you.
And to bridge that gap, I mean, millions of people turn to what is undoubtedly the world's most famous injectable, Botox.
Boy, that doubt.
But today, we are going well beyond the surface. We're launching a deep dive into the serious medical science, the honestly incredibly intricate anatomy of the human face, and the precise artistry required to actually execute this treatment correctly.
Because there is a lot more to it than most people think.
Absolutely. Okay, let's unpack this. Our stack of sources today comes straight from the clinical front lines. We're looking at a comprehensive suite of materials from Sacramento Aesthetic Surgery.
Right, a great local clinic.
Yeah, and this includes their internal clinical briefings, a strategic plan document, a few of their blog posts, and a recent press release.
You know, to truly understand this treatment, you really have to look past its red carpet reputation. The story of this injectable is defined by what you might call therapeutic irony.
Therapeutic irony, what do you mean by that?
Well, we're talking about a highly potent, purified neurotoxin that somehow became the absolute gold standard for restoring a natural, youthful glow. I mean, understanding the why behind that transformation is vital for anyone considering the procedure.
It really is wild when you think about it. And the central theme across all these clinical documents we have is that to understand how this treatment smooths your skin, you first have to understand what it was originally designed to do.
Right, which had absolutely nothing to do with aesthetics.
Nothing at all. Because the timeline of how this was discovered completely subverts how we usually think of cosmetic medicine. We actually have to rewind to the 1980s.
Yeah, the early days.
The formulation was created by an ophthalmologist, of all things. It was developed specifically to treat severe functional pathologies of the eye.
Right, we're talking about conditions like blepharospasm.
Which is the medical term for severe uncontrollable eyelid spasms, right?
Exactly, spasms so bad they can effectively render someone functionally blind. And they also used it for strabismus, which is commonly known as crossed eyes.
Wow. So the clinical intent was like entirely functional.
Entirely. I mean, the eye is surrounded by this very delicate network of muscles. In a condition like strabismus, you have an overactive muscle constantly pulling the eye out of alignment.
And historically, correcting that required, what, invasive surgery?
Yeah, a scalpel. But the innovation here was introducing a neuromodulator to precisely weaken that specific overactive muscle without surgery. It was all about restoring basic ocular function and a patient's quality of life.
But during those functional treatments, the clinicians started noticing a very curious side effect.
The happy accident.
The ultimate happy accident. As the involuntary eyelid spasms began to subside from the neuromodulator, the deep frown lines around the patient's eyes and foreheads were like simultaneously vanishing.
Just melting away.
Yeah, the skin in the treated area was becoming remarkably smoother. A highly specific medical necessity accidentally transformed into a cosmetic revolution.
It really did.
So let's get into the biological mechanisms of why that actually happened. How does the freeze functionally operate at a microscopic level?
Well, the underlying science is both elegant and highly precise. Botox is formulated from purified botulinum toxin type A.
Okay.
In the body, it acts as a neuromodulator, targeting the neuromuscular junction.
The neuromuscular junction. Break that down for us.
That is the exact microscopic point where your nerve endings meet your muscle fiber. See, when your brain wants a muscle to move, it sends an electrical impulse down the nerve. But nerves and muscles don't actually touch. There's a gap between them.
Oh, interesting. So how does the signal cross the gap?
To cross it, the nerve releases a chemical messenger called acetylcholine. This chemical floats across the gap, binds to the muscle receptors, and basically tells the muscle to contract.
Got it. And the Botox interrupts that.
Exactly. This purified toxin effectively steps into that junction and intercepts the process. It prevents the nerve from releasing the acetylcholine in the first place.
So it's not permanently destroying the connection. It's more like putting a thick piece of tape over a speaker's receiver port.
That's a great way to look at it.
Right, because the DJ, your brain is still hitting play. The electrical command is actively being sent down the wire. But because that tape is blocking the port, the speaker is temporarily muffled.
Exactly. And since the tape naturally wears off over a few months, the muscle eventually gets the signal again.
But wait, if the treatment is literally just stopping the muscle from moving beneath the surface, how exactly does that fix the skin sitting on top of it? Because, you aren't injecting the wrinkle itself to fill it in.
Right, and this brings us to a foundational concept in aesthetic medicine. It's known as mechanical rest.
Mechanical rest.
Yes. To understand this, we have to look at what happens to the dermal layer as you age. When you're young, your skin has this robust, bouncy structural scaffold. It's made up of 3 critical components.
Collagen, elastin, and hyaluronic acid.
Spot on. Collagen provides the rigid structure, elastin gives it that snapback elasticity, and hyaluronic acid provides the essential hydration.
But as we mature, our bodies naturally deplete those 3 components, right? So that the scaffold weakens.
Precisely. So consider what happens every time you smile or squint or frown. Your underlying muscles fold the overlying skin.
Okay, I'm with you.
Think of the dermis like a thick piece of paper. If you fold a piece of paper once, it flattens right back out. But if you fold it in the exact same place 10,000 times...
You eventually etch a permanent crease into the material.
Exactly. When the skin's scaffold is weak, that repeated mechanical folding etches a permanent line. By blocking the nerve signal and stopping the muscle from constantly folding the skin, you're granting the skin a period of mechanical rest.
So you just give it a break.
Yeah. This pause allows the existing wrinkles to naturally smooth out over time, and it actively prevents new creases from forming by completely removing that physical stressor.
You stop the underlying mechanical stress, and the surface smooths out. Makes total sense. But because this mechanism relies on blocking specific nerve signals, injecting Botox isn't like a surface-level skincare routine.
Not at all.
You are navigating a highly complex, 3-dimensional muscular landscape. The sources highlight that there are 43 individual muscles in the human face.
43.
And all of them are layered on top of each other, right? Interacting with every microexpression we make.
The human face is not a flat canvas. It is a remarkably complex anatomical battlefield. And this is really where the expertise of a board-certified surgeon becomes non-negotiable.
I can imagine.
Those 43 muscles operate in a state of constant dynamic facial equilibrium. Think of it as a microscopic tug-of-war happening under your skin at all times.
A tug-of-war between what, exactly?
Well, you have depressor muscles, which are actively pulling your facial features down, and you have levator muscles, which are actively pulling your features up.
So it's a constant seesaw of tension just to hold a neutral expression.
Exactly. And because these muscles are deeply interwoven, the margin for error is incredibly thin. A variance of a single millimeter in the depth or location of the injection fundamentally alters the outcome.
A single millimeter.
1 millimeter is the difference between achieving a natural, well-rested glow and ending up with a permanently surprised or, poorly balanced expression.
Wait, hold on. If the entire mechanism of action relies on blocking nerve signals, literally paralyzing the muscle fibers, doesn't that fundamentally mean the goal is to freeze the face? Like, if you're disconnecting the speakers, how do you maintain any natural expression?
And that right there is the most common misconception in aesthetic medicine.
Oh, really?
The clinical goal of a highly trained surgeon is never to freeze the face. Total immobilization is actually considered a clinical failure.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
Yeah. The art of the procedure is found in the concept of softening. The practitioner uses a highly calculated dosage to selectively weaken only the specific hyperactive muscle fibers that are causing the deep creasing.
While leaving the rest alone.
Exactly. They carefully preserve the surrounding muscle tone. You still need those adjacent muscles to function so you can smile, frown subtly, and, engage in authentic nonverbal communication.
Okay, so you're just turning the volume down on the specific muscles causing the deep furrows rather than muting the entire facial system.
Beautifully said, yes.
It's a highly targeted adjustment. And when you apply that concept of facial equilibrium, that tug-of-war between depressors and levators, the versatility of what you can treat becomes incredibly broad.
It really does.
When most people think of this treatment, they think of the upper face, right? The 11s between the eyebrows or horizontal forehead creases.
Cossack's.
Right. But the briefings we read detail a list of surprising treatment areas that go far beyond the forehead, and they all rely on manipulating that mechanical seesaw.
What's fascinating here is how treating the face as an integrated functional system allows clinicians to achieve total facial harmony.
Total racial harmony.
Mm-hmm.
Let's apply that seesaw mechanism to some of these areas. Take bunny lines, for example.
Ah,
Those are the fine wrinkles on the bridge of the nose when you squint. The clinician targets the nassalis muscle to turn down the volume of the scrunching mechanism without, like, dropping the middle of the face.
it's very precise.
Or consider how they treat a gummy smile. If a patient feels their upper lip rises too high and exposes too much of their gum line, the surgeon isn't adding volume to the lip.
Right, they inject the levator labii superioris muscle.
Right, and because that muscle is a levator, a lifter, weakening, it slightly just gently lowers the resting position of that upper lip.
It's a millimeter-perfect adjustment that completely changes the geometry of the smile simply by reducing upward tension.
And the exact same logic applies to the lower face and neck. Our sources mention using this for jawline contouring and smoothing vertical neck bands.
The platysma muscle.
Yes, the platysma muscle in the neck is a depressor. It's constantly pulling the lower face downward. If you use the neuromodulator to relax that downward pull, the levator muscles in the upper face automatically win the tug-of-war.
And that naturally lifts the jawline and smooths the neck without a single scalpel.
It's literally reshaping the silhouette of the face using biological leverage. It's so cool.
It is. But knowing this intricate 43 muscle map directly dictates the incredibly strict protocols of the procedure itself.
Which makes sense.
Because this relies on altering neuromuscular communication, the vetting process is rigorous. Safety is the primary objective. Before a needle ever touches the skin, a clinical consultation screens the patient's neuromuscular history.
What are they looking for exactly?
They're looking for conditions like myasthenia gravis or Lambert-Eaton syndrome. These are autoimmune disorders that fundamentally compromise the neuromuscular junction.
Which makes perfect sense based on the mechanism we discussed earlier. I mean, if a patient's body is already struggling to process acetylcholine, if their baseline is an impaired contract signal, introducing a neuromodulator that intentionally blocks that exact same chemical messenger would be disastrous.
Oh, absolutely.
They'd be throwing a massive roadblock into an already failing intersection.
It could exacerbate systemic muscle weakness to a critical degree. They also meticulously screen for drug allergies and review all ongoing treatments to ensure biological compatibility.
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. Despite that heavy medical vetting, the actual physical procedure is astonishingly fast.
Very fast.
The sources refer to it as the ultimate lunch break transformation. Because the anatomical mapping is so precise, the actual injection process takes less than 15 minutes.
Yeah, they use ultra-thin needles to minimize tissue trauma, and there is zero mandated downtime. The patient can literally stand up and walk right back into their day.
However, while you can return to your day, you are stepping back into the world with a very strict set of rules. The aftercare is just as critical as the injection itself, and it all centers around the danger of toxin migration.
Yes, migration is the big concern.
Think about it like pouring a pristine slab of wet cement. The surgeon has leveled the shape perfectly, the foundation is flawless, and it's exactly where it needs to be. But if you walk across that wet cement before it actually sets,
You completely ruin the foundation.
exactly, the material physically shifts out of place.
The purified toxin is a liquid suspended in a very specific, localized pocket of tissue. Patients are strictly forbidden from rubbing, massaging, or applying any pressure to the treated area for at least 24 hours.
24 hours. Got it.
Furthermore, they're instructed to remain in an upright position for a minimum of 4 hours post-treatment. This allows gravity to assist in keeping the liquid exactly where it was placed.
So if someone ignores those rules, decides to take a nap, or just rubs their forehead, that liquid is going to shift.
It will. The toxin can physically migrate out of the targeted muscle and seep into unintended adjacent muscle groups.
Give me an example of what that looks like.
For example, if you're treating frown lines and the toxin is pushed downward by physical pressure, it can easily affect the levator palpebrae superioris, which is the vital muscle responsible for holding your upper eyelid open.
Oh no. And paralyzing the muscle that holds your eye open leads to goitosis, right?
Yes. A temporary but very noticeable drooping of the eyelid or localized facial weakness. It's entirely preventable, provided the patient respects the biological setting time of the product. The surgeon provides the precision, but the patient must protect the placement.
Assuming the placement is protected, the timeline for the results is clearly defined in the clinical briefings. Like, you aren't going to look in the mirror 10 minutes later and see a different face.
Right, it takes a little time.
It takes about 1 to 3 days to start noticing a subtle smoothing as the muscle slowly stops receiving the acetylcholine signal. The real magic, what the clinic calls the full reveal, happens right at day 7.
Day 7 is the sweet spot.
That's when the skin achieves this maximum polished look. And that result has a biological lifespan of about 3 to 4 months before the body naturally clears the neurotoxin and the nerve signals begin to successfully fire again.
That 3 to 4 month lifespan is the linchpin for understanding the overarching clinical strategy. Approaching this treatment isn't a one-off event. No, it requires a long-term preventative philosophy, which is the standard of care championed by the specific clinic featured in today's sources.
Right, because if you only do it once, the tape eventually falls off the receiver, the muscle starts folding the skin again, and the clock just starts ticking right where it left off.
Exactly. The ultimate clinical strategy shifts the paradigm from reaction to prevention. We need to revisit the difference between dynamic and static wrinkles.
Oh, right.
Dynamic wrinkles only appear during movement, like when you smile or scowl. Static wrinkles are the lines that have become permanently etched into the skin. They're visible even when your face is completely at rest, precisely because the dermal scaffold has been continuously folded.
The goal is to stop the dynamic stress before it etches the static line.
By maintaining a regular, consistent schedule of treatments every few months, you're effectively pausing the clock. You never give the skin the opportunity to fold long enough or hard enough to etch that permanent crease.
Makes sense.
You're preserving the structural integrity of the skin over the long term, rather than trying to fill a deep canyon years after the tissue has already broken down.
And translating that high-level preventative philosophy into real-world practice is exactly what we see happening locally in the Sacramento community. Our sources highlight the work of Dr. Donald House and his team at Sacramento Aesthetic Surgery.
Yes, Dr. House.
He brings over 20 years of board-certified surgical experience to the table. And what stands out in their strategic documents is their commitment to holistic care. They aren't just running an injection assembly line.
No, they really aren't.
They blend the art and science of aesthetics by pairing Botox with dermal fillers to restore lost volume, or utilizing advanced laser technologies to refine skin texture. It's a comprehensive approach to achieving that total facial harmony we talked about.
Their recent strategic moves highlight a dedication to making this level of specialized medical care deeply accessible within the community.
Yeah, the recent press release we reviewed formally announced their expansion of these specific Botox services, tailored directly for the residents of the Fruitridge Pocket, California area.
Right.
The emphasis in the release is heavily placed on bespoke, customized patient care. They're actively pushing back against the cookie-cutter approach that plagues a lot of the aesthetic industry, ensuring the community has access to surgical-grade precision in a local, trusted environment.
It's a critical offering for any community, really providing access to practitioners who respect the complex 43 muscle anatomy and prioritize natural, balanced results over extreme alterations.
Absolutely. So if you're listening to this and you happen to be in the Sacramento or the Fruitridge Pocket area and you are feeling like it might be time to bridge that communication gap.
Right, if you're ready for a change.
Yeah, if you are ready to trade that perpetually tired or angry look for a reflection that actually matches how vibrant you feel on the inside, you should definitely reach out to their team. You can contact Sacramento Aesthetic Surgery directly by calling 916-646-6869. You can also explore their specific procedures page at housecall.com/procedures/Botox or reach out through their contact page at housecall.com/contact-us.
They have a lot of great resources online.
They do. They also have a wealth of reviews and information on their Google business profile, which you can find at maps.app.goo.gl/M412Z XYENHXUIIT9. It's a phenomenal local resource for anyone looking to navigate this space safely and effectively under the guidance of a board-certified surgeon.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, beyond just the localized smoothing of the skin, the mechanisms we've discussed today carry a fascinating, almost philosophical implication.
Oh, totally. It really makes you wonder about the mind-body connection. We've established that dynamic wrinkles are the physical etched record of a lifetime of emotions.
Yes, they physically map our frustrations, our intense focus, our stress.
Exactly. And the treatment essentially pauses the mechanical expression of those feelings on the surface of the skin. So the provocative thought is this: if the physical act of scowling can actually send a signal to your brain reinforcing that you're frustrated, does smoothing out our outward facial expressions subtly change the way we internally experience those emotions?
It alters the physical feedback loop of human emotion. You're potentially mitigating the biological reinforcement of negative feelings simply by resting the muscle.
If you physically cannot furrow your brow in anger, does the anger itself feel slightly less intense?
It is a fascinating psychological frontier.
It really is. It brings us all the way back to that moment looking in the rearview mirror. We started by talking about the gap between how you feel and how you look. But maybe by changing how you look, you're actually shifting how you feel. Something to think about the next time you catch your reflection.